All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Be Productive podcast. On this podcast, we focus on the one thing approach and try to highlight a different area each week to help you transform how you view, set, and ultimately achieve your goals. And through our proven approach, we guide you to take your big ambitions and break them down into smaller goals, smaller activities. So when you have regular adjustments along the way, you can achieve anything that you want. And today, Mark and I are here to talk a little bit about what we call Lie 3. And Mark, I want to kick us off with a quote that we both know and use all the time, which is, people do not decide their future. They decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. What do you think about that?
I think it's true. I think we're a result of our habits. I think that the daily actions that we take influence the results and opportunities that we get tomorrow and the months and weeks to come. And I think we have control over what we do every day, what choices we make, and therefore the outcomes that we get to realize.
Yeah, I said Lie 3, and for context, in the book, The One Thing, there are some lies that are identified that stand between you and success. And the third lie is a disciplined life. And one thing I know we want to talk about today is drawing a distinction between the value of discipline, or the leverage of discipline, and habits over time, and how the distinction between those two things and understanding how to use each can really help you overcome some hurdles and build towards success over time.
Yeah, it's one of these things where people read the book, Chris, and in my experience, they read the book and they think, oh, well, then I don't have to be disciplined at all. And that's actually not what the book is saying, right? It says be disciplined for a period until you no longer have to be, because you're a different version of yourself, because you formed appropriate habits. So we're not saying don't be disciplined. We're just saying leverage it for a period of time until you become a different behavior. You have a different behavior.
Yeah, it's like you're using different discipline and different sprints over time. Mm-hmm. If you come from like a product development world, sprint may have a different meaning, but there's a similar application, like sprinting towards the completion of a project. You're like sprinting towards the formation of a habit. And once it becomes automatic for you, you hit that point where it doesn't require additional discipline and focus, and your brain's kind of adapted to it and it just kind of happens. Then you can reapply that discipline to something new. And so I think, to your point, it's not that you don't use discipline, you just use it very strategically, and you don't have to run this marathon of discipline. If you're thinking about something like, man, I just want to lose some weight, it's going to require that I'm disciplined for the rest of my life in this one area. And if you take that approach, you're setting yourself up for failure, because nobody is perfect. What you're trying to establish is an underlying habit that if you were to do this thing, and if it's counting calories every day or something in that context, if you do that every day over time, it just becomes automatic after a while. And it's the kind of habit that sets you up long term, and you can focus on something else.
Yeah. What do most of us do, right? We want to be significantly more successful in multiple areas of our lives. And so we think the reason this is a lie is we think, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to be more disciplined about the time that I get up. I'm going to be more disciplined about what I eat. I'm going to be more disciplined about my activities. I'm going to be more disciplined at work and cut out the water cooler talk. I'm going to be more disciplined about my email. And then all of a sudden we have this entire life of discipline. And because if we solely rely on the discipline, over time, we're going to lead to burnout, because we're not moving the needle enough in any one area that we always have to be disciplined. And being that kind of life is exhausting. Even in just being disciplined to form a habit, for me, tends to get very exhausting by the end of the 66 days. I'm like, man, would this hurry up and just become a habit for me, because I'm tired of tracking. I just want it to be a part of who I am. And so when we think about this, I believe the context is saying, you're released. We're giving you permission to not be disciplined in every area of your life. I love what you just said about the sprints. It's a great imagery. I'm just going to be focused in this one area. And then when that becomes, then I'll add discipline to another area. And also, I think it's really important, Chris, that you don't have to have a myriad of great habits. One of my greatest takeaways from the goal setting retreat this last year, when we were in San Antonio, was when Jay Papasan, co-author of the book, said that about 90% of his success comes from two habits that he's formed. And so if we can be disciplined in some areas that really move the needle in several goals or several areas, that one activity that really sets us up, those are what we can call power habits. And if we can be disciplined for in that area that affects multiple areas, man, that's really, really life-changing. It's game-changing for us as high achievers.
Yeah, man. You said something before about it becoming a part of you, the habit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really important lens that I find when it comes to goal setting and goal achievement and how it ties to habits. And it's equally, if not more, about like who are you trying to become than it is about the thing you're trying to achieve, and like making that mindset switch. Because when you're talking about habits, you're talking about changing behavior. And when you align your habits with like, what is the kind of person that I need to become that would even be able to achieve these goals? And what are the behaviors that they have on a daily basis? Then you can identify, okay, what are some habits that I need to form so I can evolve my behavior and I can start to embody the characteristics of a person. So it's more about the, like, who are you trying to become as much as it is, or more than it is about what it is you're trying to achieve. And that really ties to habits for me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you get the habits, you start to think bigger, right? I think it was you that said the further up, I think it was after we had a team offsite. We were in Arizona, and I think you came back from a morning hike on Camelback Mountain. You said it's interesting, the farther we got up the mountain, the better we could see. I believe it was you that said that. And it's the same thing with our habits, right? We become these better versions of ourselves. We better versions of how we approach goal setting or our relationships, our physical health, whatever that might be. And we get new perspectives. So the goal actually almost becomes irrelevant because we end up changing it, because we have better perspective or we're more clear on what we want based on the work we've done and who we've become in the process.
Yeah. Something that I've interpreted maybe a little differently than I see talked about in our world sometimes is like this idea of daily habits. I mean, we have a 66-day challenge, which is amazing, and I recommend everyone do it. If there's something you could do every day that would make everything easier for you on the path to your goals, form a habit around it, do it for 66 days. That's the data that we have. It says on average 66 days it takes to form a habit to reach this point of automaticity. I think that's important. And I think that there are like routines, maybe you would call it rituals, or things that aren't always daily for me that I think are equally as important. There are things that happen like a behavior shift in the course of a week. You do something a few times. It's not always daily, and I think that's important to call out too. And I tend to call those more like routines than they are habits. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. And I have full transparency. If you'd asked me that 6 months ago, I would have pushed back on that a little bit. But I've realized too, in some people's worlds, they don't need to do something every single day. To your point, they don't need necessarily a habit, but we're talking about behavior change. And so if that behavior change can be adjusted 2 or 3 times a week, that's okay. I've also learned, as we've seen this be applied to businesses or corporations, where an entire business might go on a 66-day challenge or sprint to achieve a certain initiative. That's something that can be leveraged. And again, what does it force us to do, though? It's a goal that then requires us to adjust our behaviors according to the goal. So I think you're right. It doesn't have to necessarily be a daily Monday through Monday activity. It's more so about the principle being, are my activities, are my behaviors in line with the result that I'm after? And if the answer is yes, and that's 2 or 3 times a week, I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then there's this concept that we teach, believe in, to get down to like, well, how can I identify what that habit is, or what is that thing that I need to start doing more repetitively? And it starts by attaching it to your goals, breaking your goals down, and there's a process we call identifying your lead domino. And the analogy of the dominoes comes from the One Thing book, and lining up your goals and your activities like dominoes, and getting down to what is like the very smallest activity you can do every day, a la your lead domino, your tiny 2-inch domino. And that we found that to be really successful. And there's something in there though that I've not struggled with, but seen from my vantage point maybe could be sometimes a misinterpretation, and it's almost like a search for a hack or like a way to break the system. And what my advice in that though is sometimes, and I'll give you an example, but my advice in there sometimes is like, don't try to cheat the system. Like it's oftentimes the thing you're looking for is right there in front of you and very simple. And you got to watch out for ways that your brain's trying to trick you, to hack things, to look for places to hide, to, if examples I'll hear sometimes is, and it's okay if it works for you, but it's like, yeah, I need to, put my shoes in a place where no matter what, I'm going to see them to be most likely to go work out. And if that works for you, that's great. But sometimes I struggle with that. I'm like, man, you just got to you're looking for reasons to perhaps maybe hide. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I'm honestly, if I can be candid, I'm not surprised that that's true for you. Now, but in context, let's look at where you are compared to where most people on the journey. Here you are, you're a world class athlete, right? I mean, achieved at the highest levels in some of your skill sets. I mean, you run it. Everything you do is pretty high level. And so I've started to call this thing the domino dance, which is where we start really small, but then over time we earn the right to go bigger on our dominoes. And I think for almost every area of your life, and this is not flattery, this is just true. You, like some of our other our clients and our members of our community, are playing at a 36th, 21st domino in a lot of areas of their lives. When people start on the journey, and this is brand new for them, though, a lot of times I see the opposite. I see where they think they've gone small enough, and it's still too big. When we did our monthly group coaching call in January, March, April, we had the panel of some of our what we called OG members, right? And it was people who've been around the community for several years. And the consistent theme of helping them get started was when they thought they had gone small enough, go smaller, go smaller, go smaller. So sometimes in an area where we really struggle to make any forward progress, it can be like, just put the shoes out. But once we've started to have success in one area of our lives, there's an easy tendency for us to pull that success over to other areas. Like, think about it this way. If I'm trying to increase my business, but I've already personally lost weight, or I've built the physique that I want, or I've completed a big challenge, it's easy for us to go, I've been able to accomplish that goal. I was able to do that, and that was difficult. So doing this becomes easier because I know I was able to achieve that. And I think in those situations, when you've had enough of those wins in your life of, I've succeeded in some big goals or some challenges that, like I've competed on the world stage and I've been wildly successful, it tends to get easier for us to say, I don't have to start as small because I've got a lot of other wins and a lot of momentum. The snowball that's rolling down the hill in your life may be significantly larger than someone who's, just put on the skis for the first time, right? Terrible analogy. But the point is that you got to start where you are. Like if you were, you just got married. So this whole conversation on relationships, you might start on something really small. Like, can I buy my wife flowers every day? Where someone else might be going, okay, like I remember that stage of my life, So I think it is where
probably still needs to buy those flowers though, right?
Yeah, for sure. I still do. Right. But I think that's probably more true, right? If someone's just coming into the process, it's not the ability to go too small that's concerning for me. And I don't think it's a way of hiding. I think it's a way of going small enough that it is the initial activity that gets us into action. And for most people, they go too big. They start out, I want to go do the run, and I want to run it a mile at this amount of time, and not, can I just get out of bed, or can I put my phone down or turn the TV off? Whereas people who come in with great successes and they've already pretty much developed this skill of modifying their behavior, for them going small looks different from someone who's just starting. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's well said. I think what stood out for me there was you need to get to the root cause of why you haven't been able to make progress on the goal that you've set, for sure. And I see that. And also there's probably some necessary awareness around how quickly when you start to succeed in these really small dominoes, like how quickly you need to start to move forward, right? You need to start to pull yourself out. And I think what I see is if you don't get that momentum going and like leverage the momentum that you've created, and start to raise the bar kind of on how you're pushing yourself, then you can get stuck down there. And you that's where the hiding tends to happen. You keep shifting around those kind of like small lead domino hacks, and you're always trying to find the next hack, which I think is potentially limiting versus like, okay, if you need to get down to that thing and put your gym shoes by the front door so you're more likely to go to the gym, then like once you get that going, you form that habit, then let's stack that habit and let's start to raise the bar a little bit on and you said something that I really liked, which is it's almost like a muscle you build. There's some confidence in a muscle that you build. Like if you are more familiar with changing your behavior and seeing success in that, you A, know how to do it, and B, have the confidence that you will be successful. And so once you start to build that, then leverage that, like what we're talking about, which is 100%. The importance of not trying to just harness this discipline over time. It's really about form those habits, and then once it's established, stack the next one on top so you can carry this momentum towards the goals that you've set for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's 100%. And the intention is not for you to stay at the 2-inch domino forever. It's the 2-inch domino then knocks down the others, and eventually you're going to get to this point where you're playing with bigger dominoes. And there might be a time when you start to, I'm seeing you start to regress a little bit, so you might have to step down and go to smaller. We see this a lot with some industries, right? It's like around sales. Some people might just start with, can I just do time on a task versus now let me graduate to that time of, let's say, lead generation might become contacts, and then contacts becomes appointment set, and like that we're graduating. And so to say if I'm in sales for 20 years and I'm good at making contacts with people, I don't need to set the bar around contacts. I need to set the bar around appointments. You know what I mean? Or whatever your industry key performance indicator is, like you might start really small if you're new. But you also might start larger if you've been around for some time and you've got some established behavior patterns. And then when you notice that you're not getting a result, it's okay to go back a little smaller, go back a few dominoes, regain proficiency in a habit, and then build on again. You should always be progressing through the lineup of dominoes in any area. And what we're saying is, in any area, if you can build a habit around the fundamental pieces, those habits then make it easier to show up at the higher levels, that now you are just a greater version of yourself, and the dominoes just continually, the dominoes continue to fall over time.
Yeah, success is sequential, right? It's one habit at a time over time that ultimately will create this big success in any area of your life that you're focused, and it's being intentional about what that is. So as we always say, think big and go small. So think big. Challenge yourself about where you want to go, and then go small too. What are the tiny habits? Even if it's putting your shoes in front of the door, that's fine. What are the tiny habits that you need to form so that you can gain momentum? One thing at a time, over time, creates extraordinary success. Thanks, Mark. Well, it's great talking to you about habits today, and I appreciate you being on. This is a fun conversation.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for listening to our Be Productive podcast, where we talk about how you can transform how you view, set, and achieve your goals. Bye, everybody.
See you, friend.